There's two quick things I want to mention before I really get into the wrap-up of last week's discussion. First, I really do want to thank you guys for creating such a welcoming learning community, and for those of you who do have more experience and expertise in digital imaging, thank you guys for sharing this with your classmates, for engaging in conversation, providing other resources and discussion. It's very easy in an online discussion, especially when you're looking at the content that we're looking at, for responses to simply be, yes, I agree, or that's really cool, thanks. However, you're doing a really good job of extending the conversation. Hey, have you seen this? Your post reminded me of it. So you are all to be commended on that, but I really did want to say thank you to the students who do have more experience and are trying to extend that experience into our classroom and make this a more vibrant conversation and interesting class overall. As a result of last week's discussions, this is number 2, I want you to take a look at the announcements. Obviously, I always announce when this overview is published and ready, but with this week's announcement, I included a master aggregated list of all of the videos and websites and resources that were shared related to the 7 concepts that came out of our discussion. So, what was our discussion? Well, we were looking at the best practices and different principles related to photography. So the 7 concepts that really stood out across all 3 discussion groups: depth and dimension, and how you can add a layer of depth depending on the angle of photography or following other rules, or even breaking other rules. The concept of framing, and how we don't necessarily see framing as much with the mobile photography age, but it's still something that can be easily implemented. Leading lines, this is one that came up a lot when we were talking about breaking rules. Sometimes you need to break a rule, like the rule of thirds, in order to get good leading lines. On other occasions, though, you can follow rules in combination, like leading lines. Lighting was another one that came up in multiple discussion groups. And how do we pay attention to lighting? How do we look at the lighting around us? And how do we think about the effect that lighting has on our pictures? Only one person brought up the idea of look down, look back, and look up, but I thought it was worthwhile to mention because sometimes we can see some really cool pictures waiting to happen when we take a different perspective by looking down, looking back, or looking up. So an example would be the National Museum of Wildlife Art up in Jackson. You might be wandering around looking at all the different displays, but you suddenly look up and see that they've decorated the ceiling. And that's a fantastic picture to grab. So an extension of that would be perspective and changing perspectives when you're trying to get a good picture. And then the last one of my favorites, one that's talked about often and can make or break some of the easiest pictures, is that of the rule of thirds. Now, it was very fascinating because I think almost every group extended the rule of thirds by bringing up the golden ratio. These are the 2 images that you see on screen. The upper picture is the golden ratio in action. The bottom picture is actually taken by one of your classmates, and looking at the rule of thirds and how the athlete is lined up on that far left third line, and just the balance that can bring despite our innate desire to center everything. It's funny because this did come up in a conversation. If you've taken 5320 message design, then you'll remember centering everything as being a layout sin. If you haven't yet taken ITEC 5320 and it's in your future program, you'll take that with me in a spring semester. But we talk about how centering everything is not a good practice. And the rule of thirds applies whether we're looking at text on a sheet of paper or an image. So it's nice to have that crossover between our classes. You guys did a great job of digging into the ideas and really exploring what was something that you really wanted to work on as you move forward with this class and with our assignments. So thank you for that. Let's take a look at this week's topic. Use the on-screen navigation to access another section of this week's overview.